Crossing Church, how are you doing? It is so good to see you today. I want to welcome our newest campus joining with us today, the Crossing Jacksonville. Woo! It's awesome. Ready? Are you ready? How many of you want to hear a number? How many of you want to hear a number? You want to hear a number? Ready? 499. I was talking to someone on Facebook Live. I go, couldn't you find one more? Nah, just one more. What a beautiful spring day in Illinois, Iowa, Missouri. Showers of blessing. I'm trying to think of something positive. Anyway, we are so excited about what God has done, what he continues to do in all of our communities, in the community of Jacksonville, all that for his glory. We want to welcome all of our other locations throughout this area. We're so thankful for each one of you, our inside, our online, our .tv ministries. Thankful for you. You know, Jacksonville was a .tv ministry, and now it's a campus, and that's just awesome. And that can happen other places as well, because our first core value is we'll do whatever it takes to reach people far from God. And that means we're outward. We're outwardly focused. And we just want to continue to stay outwardly focused, sharing the love of Jesus. And that's what you guys are about in Jacksonville. It comes out of a desire to reach as far out as we can for the love of Jesus Christ. And that goes for all of our locations and all of our ministries. So thankful for you. And that's why we just finished a series called Wrecked. It's the second. We did one called Wreck the Roof last year, and then we did a follow-up series this year. Just ended a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to take some time and share the fruit of that with you. And there's been some incredible faith-stretching moments, and God's moved in ways like we've never seen before. It's been exciting. We've watched these powerful, moving videos. We have one of these videos, a testimony, a little slice of what God has been up to. We see him every month, but I want you to know that those videos are not as easy as they look. Like, you can goof up on a video, and so we thought we'd have a little bit more of a transparent fun with you right now, so watch this video. Jesus spent a disproportionate amount of time bringing life to these rural, relatively small towns. He brought value. Today in rural America is for it, that's wrong. And into each one of our lives. Yeah, I can goof that up there. As a part of Wrecked, we are going to look at the early church. I didn't do that very well. Rest, but
it just has open. Okay, I need to start over.
I gotta do that?
Yep.
She's impressive. That's why I married her.
How many more questions are we gonna list down?
Just go talk.
So where do we look?
Me.
Okay, wonderful. Try not to cry. I can pull myself back together. Where do I start? What are we saying? I forgot totally what you said.
Include myself, my son.
Why do we give to the cross? Why do you give? Why do you write it?
I'm gonna get choked up. I need my water.
My daughter, my mother.
I hope our small group people look more excited than you two guys in the back.
My father, her father, her aunt.
I got to be a part of the Macomb launch. In fact, I got to paint Clayton's office several times because he kept changing the color on me. So that was a lot of fun. Not.
Her niece, cousins.
Hey guys, right now I am cooking filleted fish over here. Let's do it one more time, the whole hands part. Okay, I'm doing this.
Change my shirt. Be quiet. How was that? Go. Hey, Crossing.
With the Wreck the Roof initiative, I'm gonna start that one over.
Hi.
That's okay.
She's here. Here you go. And you know the relationship. Just is he crying?
You can do editing, right?
Penny, you want?
roll our eyes. That's gonna be really hard.
Put it all together.
You're the
so
hugger. He's the campus hugger.
yeah, full frontal for sure.
Hi, I'm James Marsden Ryan. We're the Turners, been a part of the crossing.
Really? That sounds fraudulent. That sounds fake.
Made first, committed. There it is again.
All right.
So, funny story. If you go to Mount Carmel and at the top of it, it says no smoking and no fires.
So families and individuals have taken huge steps in their faith. And when we take those kinds of steps, you know, it really moves the heart of God. So I want to really encourage you and challenge you in those two things. While we've gotten new and increased commitments and it's taken us well over that $26 million over 2-year goal for all of our giving for Wreck the Roof, we're not currently on pace to actually hit those numbers. And so what I want you to know is that on this one year anniversary, if you've spun out, if you've gotten off track, this is a great opportunity to get back on track. This is a great opportunity to finish strong. And if you've been doing that, just keep on keeping on. Don't stop. If you're new to the crossing, this is a great opportunity for you to just get on that starting line with the rest of us and start moving, because we want to accelerate and hit those targets, because that's going to change our personal lives, and we're going to hit those 5 pillars that we talked about last year for the kingdom. Now, we're in a series called the You Project. And it's been an incredible series because what we've been doing is developing a biblical worldview. And a biblical worldview begins with you. It doesn't begin with someplace else or you viewing something somewhere else. It begins inside of you. It begins when you discover your identity. And through that, your dignity. I mean, that's a big word today, identity. We find our identity in only one place, and that's in Jesus Christ. And then when we find that, we have our dignity. When we have our dignity, through that, we find our purpose, what our giftings are for, what we're supposed to do on this earth. And then we need to live in the freedom of that purpose. And if that's true for you, it's true for everybody that walks on this earth. In America, we have a pretty narrow view of the world. We can. Very Americanized view of the world. And we need to learn how to see it differently. And even though like a short-term mission trip into a developing country can really move that forward at a breakneck speed, I think that just spending time studying it together and trying to understand it together can go a long way to changing our attitude. Because when we look out at the world that might be struggling materially or financially or educationally or with health care, we see that oftentimes as a problem when really what we could be looking at is the solution, because God can do that. I want you to watch this video.
I may never grow up to be a world-famous musician or sing for thousands of people, perform at Carnegie Hall, or sing at Madison Square Garden, or have thousands of screaming fans. I may now be the next president of Uganda, the next Billy Graham, the next Mother Teresa, the next Bill Gates, or Donald Trump. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. I didn't know an Apple was a computer, what a tweet is, or how to tag my friends on Facebook.
Our children may not be the next members of parliament, champions of social justice, or lead thousands of people to the Lord.
They may not invent the next $1 million app, discover the cure for AIDS,
or end world hunger.
but they might.
They might. I really believe that some of them will.
To sing whenever I want to. Feel that I belong somewhere. Have a way to express myself. To feel special. To make my family proud of me. To lead people in worship. To represent my community. To tell people how much God loves them. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. I am going to be a leader one day. I am going to be a leader one day. I am. I am. I am going to make a difference one day. I am. I am. And that's worth it. And that's worth it. And that's worth it.
That is what is beautiful about the U Project, and that's what's beautiful about a biblical worldview. It's worth it because when you find your dignity, you're worth it. And if you're worth it, everybody is worth it. That's what comes from a biblical worldview. So I want us to review where we've been. We were in the very first week. We asked a question, and we sent it out as a survey, and then we got responses from that. And the question was, what is poverty? We have a pretty narrow idea about what poverty is not to have certain things. We tend to want to define it that way. But what we discovered was that real poverty comes from a loss of dignity, and a loss of dignity comes from not understanding your identity, particularly that identity in Jesus Christ and the relationship that we can have with God. And so there are things inside of us that are broken. We have a broken relationship with God. We have a broken relationship with self. We have a broken relationship with others. And that brokenness strips away our purpose, our dignity, and our freedom. We've learned that poverty isn't just a material thing. It's actually a spiritual thing. There's so many different ways that can be illustrated biblically. I just want to point you to this one story in Luke 21. Jesus is watching something and then commenting on it. It says he looked up and Jesus saw the rich putting their gifts into the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow put in 2 very small copper coins. I tell you the truth, he said, this poor widow has put in more than all the others. All these people gave their gifts out of their wealth. But she, look at these 4 words, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on. She was not living in her poverty. By taking those 2 copper coins, which was all she had, and putting them in the treasury, she was showing something to God, and it was revealing something about her heart, that she was not living in her poverty. She was living out of her poverty. She was trusting God. She was turning it all over to God. And that's why Jesus could look at her and say, there's the richest person in the room, not the poorest. And I guarantee you, as God Almighty was leaning up against a pillar in the form of Jesus Christ, he was going to take care of that woman, right? We learned that those of us who have interacted in environments with people that we might consider poor countries, poor peoples, that we can be confused because they can actually have incredible joy. Maybe a greater joy than we have. In that first week, I had Andre Harper on stage with me from our Macomb campus, who was born and grew up in Jamaica. And what he reminded us was that he didn't know that he was in poverty. He actually had to have a missionary show him that or tell him that. He had great joy in his identity in Jesus Christ, and he had to go through a process to kind of unlearn some things that he had learned negatively so that he could be reminded of who he actually is in Jesus Christ. And we've also learned that in America, even though we have so much material blessing, which I thank God for, we can actually be the poorest of all. And it's because we don't know who we are. It's because we find our worth and our dignity in our knowledge and our acceptance of our identity that we find in Jesus Christ. In the second week, we talked about purpose, because if you have dignity, then you can recognize that you have purpose, that God commissioned us all not only to know who we are in Him, but to also make Him known to others, right? So that's our purpose, to know Him and then to make Him known. We've all been given gifts, all of us. There's nobody exempt from this, to accomplish this purpose. Some of us have a few gifts, some of us have a lot of gifts. And we discover those gifts and then we put them into practice for the cause of Jesus Christ. You remember when Clayton was preaching this, he put up a table back here and he had a timeline with little icons kind of showing major transitional moments in life. And we all have those. And a lot of times we'll have this self-speak where we say, hey, when I get to this place in my life, well, then I'm going to be able to do what I need to do for God. If I just have these things in order or these things in place, then I can do something for God. And if we keep putting that off for the next moment, we can end up looking back on life and going, man, we've missed all these moments, because the time to experience your purpose isn't sometime in the future. It's right now. You need to do it right now. In the third week, Clayton was talking to us and he taught us about being set free from all the things in this world that bind us up. And we all experience that. We can all feel bound, right? He had two chairs up here. He had someone representing the developing world. He had someone representing someone in America, right? And so in the developing world, as he was doing the rope and the tying up, he was saying that, that could be material poverty. It could be a lack of education. It could be disease. It could be a lack of health care, access to health care. And all those things bind us up. In America, it could be very, very different. Lots of other, what we would call first world problems, right? And then we learned that what Jesus can do, and only Jesus can do, is He can set us free from that bondage. So what Jesus accomplished when He died, when He was buried, and He rose again on the third day, is He took some scissors to those bonds, to those ropes, and He cut them off of us, right? All we need to do now is walk in that freedom. But even though He's cut the bonds, a lot of us stay in the chair. We don't get up. Think about all the times that Jesus said that to somebody He was healing, that He would just say, get up, right? Remember this one from Mark chapter 2? This was the man that was let down through the roof. That was a paralytic. Which is easier, to say to the paralytic, your sins are forgiven, or to say, get up, take up your mat and walk? But that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. He said to the paralytic, I tell you, everybody say that. Say it like you mean it. Take your mat and go home. And then he what? Say it like you mean it. Took his mat and walked out in full view of them all. And this amazed listen, when you start walking in your freedom, even though you have your identity and you have your dignity and you have your purpose and your gifting, when you actually get up and you start walking and living in that freedom, this is what it's going to do to the people around you. It amazed everyone, and they praised God, saying, we've never seen anything like this. That's what will happen. So are you courageous enough right now to do an honest evaluation of yourself? Not thinking about the people around you or the people that ought to be here today or one of our locations, but just you. Are you living in dignity? Are you walking in your purpose? Are you experiencing freedom? Have you gotten up? How do you see the world? Do you have a biblical worldview or an American worldview? How would I know that, Jerry? Well, when you look at kids in poverty, whether you watch it on TV or you see them in an area of town that maybe you don't spend a lot of time in, how do you view them? How do you view them in your community? How do you view them in the world? Now, this can be really scary because it actually tells you how you view others, actually tells you how you see the world. And if you see the world comparatively, now when I say comparatively, I'm saying you're putting yourself somewhere in this and they're putting them. So if you're the person who has material wealth and you're looking at someone who's living in a different context and you look down, do you know what we call that? Call that privilege. Because you're looking down comparatively. If you're living in a place where there's more material poverty and you see people living in a better way than you and you're looking up comparatively, guess what we're calling that? Privilege. Either you're coming from the aspect of privilege or you're coming from the aspect of coveting privilege, coveting what you don't have. And that means you're not living in your identity and you're not living in your dignity. Why do I know that? Because no matter where you live, what context you live in, how much money you have, how you get your water, no matter how you would describe yourself, if you are in Jesus Christ, you're a new creation. The old is gone, the new has come, and you are living in an identity where you can have dignity, no matter where, no matter what. Are you living that way? Do you recognize other people can live that way? Have you taken time to consider what that actually might be? Are we still asking God, what's your purpose? What's your will for my life? When you need to be living in your gifts right now, right now. Look what it says in Romans chapter 12, verse 2. It says, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world. I don't know that we realize it, but we really struggle in this area. This is an idolatry area in America. We try to live in conformity. We try to live comparatively in conformity. But be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's what this is about. Developing a biblical worldview is about being renewed, all right? And I want you to see that what this doesn't say. It doesn't say be transformed by renewing your mind or transform yourself by renewing your mind. It says, it's in the passive voice, by the renewing of your mind. You know what that means? You can't do it yourself. You cannot do it unless God helps you to do it. Then, and only then, will you be able to test and approve what God's will is. His good, pleasing, and perfect will. Is it possible that you're struggling understanding God's will for your life because you're living in conformity instead of seeking to be renewed through the Holy Spirit? Wow. That could be a moment right there for you. Are you being conformed to the pattern of this world? Could be a question if you're being conformed to the pattern of this world. America has a pretty powerful pattern of conformity. And when we know who we are and what our purpose is, then we break the bond of that. We break the bond of conformity. But just because the bond is broken doesn't mean that we're getting up and living in it. We have to do something. And that's what this sermon is about. It's about doing something. Now, this sermon series is a product of somebody doing something. Now, I know, and most of the time you'd be right, but you're not this time, that Clayton and I get together and we figure out what we're going to preach and we put it into a series and a set of sermons. But that wasn't the truth with this series. Actually, we totally ripped this whole thing off. It was somebody else that came up with this whole idea and all the things that you've been seeing. And I want to introduce you to the person who did something with her knowledge of the world and her passion for helping us to see the world in a different way. The author of the U Project's here with us today. Her name's Jessie Holland. She's my daughter. So I'm going to ask her to come up here. And she works full-time in missions. Hi, sweetie.
Hi.
She's awesome. I'm so proud of her. All right. And this is what I want you to do. I want you to tell everybody over this 4-week series, what was it that inspired you to do the U Project? What was important to you? And what do you want them to understand? Or what do you want their takeaway to be?
Yeah, awesome. Well, hey guys, thanks for having me here at the Crossing. This place means the world to me for multiple different reasons. One is because of this guy, but also because I grew up here. I grew up in this church, serving in this church, and I also actually helped start the Macomb campus, the preschool inside the Macomb campus. I'm going to shout out to my Macomb homies out there in Macomb. I loved it there, but I have had the awesome opportunity to work in global ministry for the past few years after I moved to Nashville, and I have had the chance to go on so many trips in my lifetime, about 15 mission trips, and I've got to lead about 9 of them. So I've had an awesome opportunity to see material poverty. And actually, by now, to me, material poverty is very normal. It's very much a part of my worldview because since I was 12 and took my first trip, I saw a new side of the world. I'm almost just as comfortable being in material poverty as I am here in America. And I've gotten the awesome opportunity to learn about what poverty is and what poverty isn't. And God's really cool because y'all know he works through really mysterious and strange ways. And he actually flipped my mindset on this whole concept of poverty through a 17-year-old high school student. So I'm going to tell you the story of a kid named Kyle, and I want you to join me on this journey. So Kyle is an awesome kid. Like I said, he's a senior, he's 17, he's living in his world. And if you looked at Kyle's world from the outside in, it looks pretty privileged. It looks put together. He looks put together. In fact, he lives in a nice part of town in a really nice house. He drives a nice car. So you would think, looking at Kyle, he's good. His future's good to go. But what you don't know about Kyle, and what I didn't know, was that his world was really bound up by those chains. His dad was in and out of prison, never really knew him. His mom is physically present, but not totally emotionally present. In fact, she's addicted to painkillers. His sister is his rock. They're best friends. But unfortunately, his sister is following the path of his mom. His grandparents, they're pretty solid. In fact, they go to church every week, to a church very similar to this one. They sat in a chair like you are, and they heard a sermon, and they heard an announcement about a mission trip for high school students. And they decided to do something. So they paid for their grandson to go on his first trip, which also my grandparents did for me when I was young. So his grandparents said, let's do something, let's send him on this trip. So Kyle says, yes, he got up. He said, okay, I'll try it. Never done it, I'll try it. He goes to REI, buys his backpack, buys his Chacos, gets his Red Bull, gets ready, gets on an airplane with his youth group, gets on an airplane, flies out of his current world, across the ocean, and gets dropped into another. A world that is totally different than anything he's used to. He gets off the plane and wow, he absolutely experiences culture shock. He smells the smells, he sees sights he's never seen before. He feels claustrophobic by all the begging. He's very, very much out of his world. So Kyle's here in this country and that's where I meet him. And Kyle and I really quickly form a friendship. And we walk together and we spend time together in this community. And on the second day of the trip, Kyle shares his story. And he goes a little deeper into his world, into how he sees the world. And he talks about his family. But one thing you can't run from is your identity. And he sits in that circle and shares his story, and his identity is just as twisted up as his home life and as his world back home. In fact, Kyle says to everyone, he goes, you know, I don't know who I am. I'm really confused. I don't know what gender I am. I don't know what gender I'm attracted to. I don't know what I'm going to do when I get out of high school and have to be an adult in the world. I have no idea. But I'm here. And so Kyle and I had the really awesome opportunity to be able to walk together in these communities. We did all the things together. We helped all the kids. We played soccer. We did all the things you do on a traditional mission trip. And through the week, he looks at me and he says, Jesse, I don't know that I understand this whole mission trip thing. I don't know that I really like it. And I said, okay, tell me, what's going on? And he goes, I think it's weird. I think it's weird that we're taking pictures with half-clothed children because it looks cool on Instagram. I think it's weird that we're walking into people's homes and into people's lives and we're telling them how they should and shouldn't act. And I said, that is weird. It is very weird. And he goes, and also, I don't know what God's doing in me. I don't really feel him. I don't see him. He's not talking to me like I thought he would on this trip. I'm not getting any sort of mission trip high like I thought I would. And I looked at Kyle and I said, hey, God's not conditional. He doesn't hold his love and hold back his love from you. He is going to see you for who you are. He does. He made you. You're made in his image. He knows every thought process that goes through your mind. He knows every synapse in your brain. He doesn't just look at your situation and say, hey, you're struggling with this. You should act this way. He gets you. So be open this week and just keep doing something. Keep your eyes open, and he's going to reveal himself to you. So we finished out the week, and every night we did what's called a debrief, and that's where you come together and you talk about what you saw God do that day. And we go around the circle of this room, and you have the absolute traditional experiences from a traditional mission trip. You have a few students that are getting ready to go home and sell everything they have and go live on the mission field in some foreign country. You have a few students that can't control their emotions and are sobbing because they don't understand why God would do something so mean to people, why he would take away everything that they have, but yet, why are they so much happier than me? You have every emotion in the room, and it gets all the way around the circle to Kyle. And it's Kyle's turn to talk, and he said, I was really, really nervous about talking today because I didn't experience what you experienced. I didn't know what I was going to say until literally right before I walked in here. He goes, but it hit me. Yeah, playing with kids was cool. Yeah, doing a VBS was cool. But what I loved the most about this trip was that every day I knew I was going to get off that bus, walk into the lobby, and sit down and eat a meal with you guys. That together we were going to talk, and you were going to treat me like a real person. And you were going to look at me in the eyes and not judge me for what I was going through, but really see me and really talk to me. And you did. Every night I got that. He looked at those students and he said, I've never had that. Nobody sees me. And the whole room went silent. The sobbing stopped. The questioning stopped. And he looked at his fellow students and he said, if we get on that plane and leave this world that we're in where we got to press pause and we go back into our world and you don't see me anymore, I'm terrified because I don't know if I'm going to make it. And the whole room shifted. And I shifted. And it went silent for a second, and I said, guys, that's poverty. What Kyle experienced his whole life before coming on this trip and and connecting to you was poverty, broken relationships with God and broken relationships with each other. That is poverty, and we all experience that. We're not alone. And I said, it's your responsibility to go back and constantly give wealth of love and hope. And that's what I learned from Kyle. And it's awesome because I still follow Kyle on Instagram, and he's doing awesome. He's at youth group every week. He posts about it all the time, and he has amazing friends. And I know he's going to be great. He's going to change the world. All because he took a minute to stop, get up, and do something. And when he did something, he found his identity from Christ, but also through other people. And now he has a purpose in life. No matter how long it takes to get there, he knows he can do it now. And his freedom was unlocked. And that's my story of Kyle, and that's how it all came about to where I was able to write this content. So thank you guys so much for hearing it and for participating in it. So, done.
So what's it going to take? I remember, was it last week where I heard, and this was, I don't know if all the locations heard this, but at 48th Street we heard Clayton say, how long? How long? How long before we do something? How long before we just stop sitting here with these broken bonds still hanging off of our arms and legs and around our chests and just get up? How long before we start living in our purpose? How long before we truly embrace the fact that our identity is found in Jesus Christ and we can have dignity in that? The greatest dignity in the world, because we're children of God. Think about it. That's who we are in Jesus Christ, children of God. We want you to do something. And today at all of our locations around the room, what you're going to see is these posters with icons on them. And in a moment, your campus pastors are going to be describing what he'd like for you to do, because at every service of the crossing, we have an invitation. We have a decision time, right? And we ask you to move, to step out, to take some ground in your life. And what we're going to do is encourage you to do that in some specific ways. But I want to encourage you right now to look inside, take a hard, honest look inside, and just see if you hear the voice of God saying, it's time to do something. Would you consider that as we move to a time of decision?
What up, YouTube family? Hope you guys enjoyed this week's message. I'm gonna encourage you guys to do 4 things today. 1, would you hit that like button and let us know that the content that we're producing is being a benefit to you and to your family? Second thing I'm gonna encourage you to do is hit that subscribe button so that we can start to coalesce and go on this journey together. The third thing I'm gonna encourage you to do is hit that bell button. That bell's gonna turn on your notifications, so every time we upload content, you'll be notified so you can join in with us as soon as possible. And then the last thing is, if you feel like you've been blessed to be a blessing and you don't give to another church, we would love to give you an opportunity to be generous with us as we try to be generous towards God. You can go into the description below and you can click that link called for the Give app, and it will walk you through everything you need to do to make that a reality. We appreciate you, we love you, and God bless you.